Greetings, fellow treasure hunters. Jacob Wile here.
And I am Tiki.
He is your friend. And welcome to Discovering DuckTales. In anticipation of the upcoming reboot, we here So You Want to Be Imagineer are dusting off the original series in this brand new vlog. It's not ponytails or cottontails. No, it's DuckTales. A-Whoo-Hoo.
A-Whoo-Hoo.
And tonight we have Armstrong.
He is your friend. Okay, Jacob, seriously, how awesome is this episode? I think really this episode is, oh my God, like it's the first one out of the five-parter that really kind of blew me away. I really, really can't say enough good things about this episode.
It's the first villain that I have. It's the first villain like outside of Magica that actually seems like an actual threat to the characters.
What I love about this episode is it really does feel like a really good kind of sci-fi story. And yeah, it's got some silly Saturday morning cartoon tropes in there, but it's also like it's very much kind of like, okay, man versus machine, and what's going to happen when technology has advanced so much that it's basically like laying off our workforces. And damn it, Jacob, I can't believe that a show like DuckTales, as cartoony as DuckTales, could deliver such a sharp social commentary like that. It's really impressive to me.
Well, the original comic stories actually did have a lot of, even though it's mostly unintentional, a lot of like social commentary in them. So it's kind of interesting to see that adapted into this in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that social commentary is really what makes this episode really shine for me. Especially given the circumstances of today, where we are now with technology, and Jacob, we have like self-driving cars now, and it's getting to the point where it's legitimately like scary for the economy, right?
Mostly, I mean, it seems that way. If it's anything like Armstrong, it'll definitely be scary for the
Oh
economy.
God. Oh man. And Armstrong is also like, what makes Armstrong so great as a villain is in the first half of the episode, he's awesome. It's like you totally buy into it. You're totally like, oh yeah, this is great. I love having this robot guy around. I hope this guy becomes like a character on the show. He's
But
awesome. He can do anything.
and they also feel bad for Launchpad at the same time too, but understand what
Right,
happened.
right. But then, of course, the turn happens, and we see his nefarious side come out. But
Like,
no, I
like
mean,
I'm counting money.
oh
I'm
god,
counting my money.
my money.
It's like I just did all this work, now it's all mine.
So let's kind of get into the writing and directing on this episode, Jacob, really quick. We have Alan Zaslov, the great Alan Zaslov, is the director, who's also going to direct, a lot more good episodes of the series. He already directed some of our favorites, including episodes 1, 3, and 5 of the Treasure of the Golden Suns 5-parter, and also Send in the Clones, the introduction of Magica Dispel. So this guy has been really consistent on the series so far. And also, this is interesting, Jacob, when we're kind of tracking the resume of these people on these shows. So we talked about a week or so ago about Sphinx for the Memories, which, in spite of having like all the ingredients of being an awesome DuckTales episode, like it had Donald Duck, it had Egypt as a setting, it had it had them going through like Indiana Jones style booby traps. Like, we both agreed that because of some of the missed opportunities there, especially with what they could have done with Donald, it just didn't, like, it really didn't come together as good as it could have, and it was probably the weakest episode of the series that we've talked about so far. And here we go, man. Michael Keyes, second episode of the series, writes the best episode of the series so far. So let's give him props, Jacob. Seriously, that is a major, major turnaround. I mean, I'm not saying Sphinx for the Memories is a bad episode, but my God, this episode is like, the writing is super on point, especially for a Saturday morning cartoon. It's very sharp.
Yeah, I have to agree there. Let's talk about the title character himself, Armstrong.
I am Armstrong.
I am your friend.
Yeah, Armstrong is a great villain. I don't think he ever comes back, does he?
If so,
Which is kind of a shame because I could see him being a reoccurring bad guy. I could almost kind of see him being an Ultron where he keeps rebuilding himself.
Age of Armstrong.
Oh God, yes, please. Okay,
DuckTales.
DuckTales writers, like new DuckTales writers, please make that an arc in the new show. Wouldn't that be
DuckTales.
awesome?
Yes.
and
Age of
then
Armstrong.
Gyro would be like Tony Stark, and Launchpad would be like Captain America, and they'd have like the ideological conflict that they'd have to work out in DuckTales Civil War.
Nice.
Oh God.
It's hilarious.
Anyways,
Get on it, DuckTales writers.
come on. All right. Yeah, Armstrong as a character is fantastic. Like I said, it's like I love how the framework of the episode is like you really do think that this robot is just so cool. You know, it's like, oh my God, I want my own Armstrong.
Does it really ever explain like why he goes bad, or just like he just like started doing so much he's like started to believe I can do anything I want?
You know, I think it could be developed a little bit better, but like I said, I'm willing to give this a lot of slack because Saturday morning cartoon. Really, from what I got out of it, yeah, it is that idea, Jacob, that he, as the episode goes on, he grows more and more of an ego about what he can do, and of course, Scrooge is just doing a brilliant job of just feeding into this, right?
Yeah, that's one thing that comes. It pretty much comes to bite him in the beak.
Yeah. And good old Gyro, man. We were just talking about this with last episode on Gyros, and you know, he just means so well, and this is an awesome invention on his part, but he is totally overlooking like the ramifications of something like this, and especially because he's just like so supportive of these ideas that Scrooge has to essentially exploit Armstrong and, you know, show off how better Armstrong is than, you know, the common working class man, you know. So I don't know. Like I said, Gyro definitely means well, but he's also very much at fault with what goes down because he's very much an enabler in this situation.
He and Scrooge get along well in that sense.
He does, yeah, very much so.
I mean, if anything, Scrooge is more of an enabler than he is. Like, we'll have a competition, man versus machine.
Yeah, but like I said, like Gyro, he's going right along with. He's like, oh, man versus machine, I like that. Let's do it, yeah. And then meanwhile, like Launchpad is like the reasonable guy in the room. And let's talk about Launchpad, man, because I really do think this is a standout episode for him as well.
Probably point out that like, these episodes really weren't aired in production order.
What?
Which is, I don't think these episodes were aired in production order.
Okay. Well, I kind of just want to plug my ears and ignore that because we're just going on the Wikipedia list, and my God, these can get confusing. But
I know, so let's just stick with it as if they aired them in their production order to keep it less confusing.
Okay, fair enough. No, but Launchpad is definitely Jacob. Out of curiosity, have you ever seen Porco Rosso?
I don't recall that.
It's a Studio Ghibli movie. It's one of the more obscure Miyazaki movies. In the Disney dub, Michael Keaton plays the main character, and essentially the main character is like this hotshot kind of like Han Solo-esque fighter pilot who gets turned into a pig. And the whole movie is very much like it very much kind of reminds me of Launchpad McQuack in a way, because he's kind of got this larger than life persona about him, even though he's not really that good of a pilot, but he loves what he does at the same time. He's got a passion for flying. It very much fits into the Launchpad McQuack role. And I think those characteristics that I just described, Jacob, are like Launchpad McQuack at his best. You know, it's like he might be a shitty flyer, but he loves what he does and he has a passion for what he does and he'll never give up on it. And whereas I think an episode like Where No Duck Has Gone Before was kind of maybe Launchpad it not his most flattering, where he was really just kind of like a bitter jerk throughout most of that episode. But here Launchpad is a lot more likable.
I had to agree there. I mean, he kind of feel bad for him when Armstrong takes his job from him. Like, when Scrooge's like, take a little vacation. A
One second,
vacation.
take a long one.
Yes, I mean, like, wow, Scrooge, way to rub. Like, he came home all covered in bruises and mud, and you had to rub salt in the wound.
You know what? I love the pathos to that too. How like literally it's played like Launchpad crashes, right? And then Huey, Dewey, and Louie are all worried about him, and like the music's all dramatic and everything, and Duckworth is just like, "I'm sorry, sirs. There's nothing we can do right now. I'm sure the authorities are doing everything they can to help find Mr. McQuack." And it's just like, oh my God, it's like, it's seriously like played straight that Launchpad might be seriously hurt.
Physically and emotionally.
Right. Okay, now speaking of Duckworth, Jacob, I seriously think Duckworth might have some of the best comedy bits in this whole show. I really do. He is a hidden gem in the show. So the bit in this episode that just absolutely cracks me up is the whole vacuuming bit. You know, it's kind of like Scrooge's first attempt to challenge the ability of Armstrong against a man, or in this case, a dog thing, whatever. But you get what I'm saying. But
If you don't need me, I shall retire.
well, I see how it is, sir. If you don't need me, then I shall retire. I just love how puffy he gets over it,
Like I said, this is a guy that could have easily left his job years ago. Like, but obviously doesn't mind working for Scrooge. But this is one point where he's probably like, ugh, he's doing this again.
And there's a Duckworth moment that comes up in the course of the series. I have no idea what episode it is, but I'll know exactly when I see it. And when I see it, it's like, I still think it might be like the number one moment in the whole show for me. It's a Duckworth quote. I'll leave it at that until we actually get to it.
All right, let's. He definitely does have some of the best lines, and I think it's because of his like high class British accent that makes it work so well.
Right.
He's like, you can tell he doesn't mind working for Scrooge because he could have easily left his job.
And that's the thing I love about the supporting cast in general is that all of them don't mind working for Scrooge. Gyro is very friendly with Scrooge. Of course, Launchpad is very supportive of Scrooge. It's nice, it's like they're all very patient with him.
Because they know how he can be.
Right. Okay, I kind of want to circle back and... I'm sorry, go ahead.
Plus, we kind of mentioned in this episode he did kind of fire some of his workers in this episode.
Oh, yeah, right? That was kind of played kind of darkly. Oh, my God, I was kind of shocked by that, actually.
Like, I have an announcement to make. And then
it just cuts to like an empty office. It's just like, oh, jeez. I mean, that would not play well around 2009.
Like, you're all fired. I'm placing you with a robot.
Jacob, I'm sorry. I kind of want to circle back around to Launchpad just a little bit more because there's a lot of stuff with his character this episode that I really admire. So I really like the opening scene with Launchpad where he comes flying in. And of course, he's just screwing everything up. But from above, it looks like he's totally being heroic and saving the day. And I love that about the character. It's like, people love him even though he's just kind of a klutz most of the time. He still has a way of just getting on people's good side and making a good show out of it, even if he doesn't even intend to. So I don't know. I just think that whole idea of him kind of stumbling around with the controls, but then the crowd seeing him and being like, "Look, it's Launchpad McQuack." It's just cool. It's cool.
Yeah. And then there's when he's like they're being chased in the airplane.
And
then he like accidentally like knocks out the steering mechanism.
Right.
It causes them to dodge the missile. Like, yeah, it takes years to learn that maneuver. He just plays it off so well.
And then also, like, when you talk about dramatic moments, Jacob, one of the moments I love in this episode, and we were kind of talking about, I was kind of referenced it last podcast when we talked about Where No Duck Has Gone Before, where No Duck Has Gone Before, Launchpad very much is kind of like jealous over the affections of the nephews over, Captain Courage. But this episode, it's played like it's basically the exact same plot, but for some reason it's just pulled off way, way better. Because we have that moment where, where we've kind of been joking about it, but it's the moment where Launchpad is like about to go in and say hi to the nephews, but they're already like, getting all, like bonding with Armstrong. And of course we have that quote, like, I am Armstrong, I am your friend. And it's just Launchpad just has the most defeated look on his face, and you feel terrible.
Yeah, I mean, they've looked up to this entire time, and when suddenly someone else takes their place, basically without warning, it's kind of jarring for him.
Mm-hmm.
When they wanted to do anybody would give him the time of day anymore.
Yeah, exactly. Which is what I really think this episode does so good is, just the idea of Launchpad essentially like going from a folk hero to just kind of like this forgotten has-been overnight. And it really, like, in 22 minutes, I really do think you get a very clear picture of where Launchpad McQuack is coming from in that regard. It's very well handled.
Very, very much so. And can we talk about some of the nightmare fuel in this episode?
Okay, go ahead.
Like, the main nightmare fuel scene from this episode is like my money. The scene that cuts to Dark with his glowing red eyes.
God, right.
That's when you know he means business.
So I will admit, Jacob, the transition from Armstrong being evil does kind of happen rather abruptly. It's basically just like, yeah, he just gets those glowing red eyes. It's like, oh shit, I guess he's evil now. But I don't know. It's almost kind of like the Pixar Lasseter thing that Dragon's always mentioning of, you know what, we're sucked in so much at this point that we just kind of buy it,
Like you said, plus it's kind of like his whole kind of ego kind of like getting the best of him now.
Exactly. And like I said, Scrooge and Gyro were certainly not good influences when it came to just, letting his ego grow out of control. So, it really is interesting.
Plus, there were kind of hints at it earlier when he like angrily looked at Launchpad and like basically said, "I am your friend," basically to spite Launchpad in the earlier.
Right.
So there were kind of hints at that, like he's like kind of hints at that. So it is kind of abrupt, but I guess like Scrooge just did make him run his entire business, so.
That's true. So, okay, let's see. Yeah, it's just a really good episode, Jacob. I'm kind of drawing a blank on what else to talk about. I mean, there's, the thrilling conclusion where Launchpad comes to the he comes to the rescue. And
right. After the nephews are attacked by toys.
Right.
Like, wait, they make it out to be this big action scene at first. It's like, it's even like that, and then she's like, they're just toys. I was like, I'm glad they pointed that out too. It's like, okay, they're just toys, and they're like, oh, they're just toys.
Wouldn't that be funny if that happened in The Nightmare Before Christmas?
Like, yeah, they're just toys. Well, then again, the toys in that are
chasing them around, and then suddenly the kids, like, in unison, are just like, "Wait a minute."
Though, admittedly, the toys here are probably a lot less deadly than the ones made by the city.
Yeah, sure. I mean, there is a man-eating wreath in Nightmare Before Christmas, and no, not that man-eating wreath, but
yeah.
If I had the know-how, or if I had like the forethought, I would have just inserted a picture of man-eating wreath with a really dopey expression on his face as soon as I mentioned man-eating wreath. Anyways, love you, Mew. So yeah, I mean, Armstrong is like straight up trying to kill Launchpad, though,
And basically probably seems like he's trying to take over the world.
This is
Gyro,
the age of Armstrong.
Geraldine really needs to stop creating inventions that allow people to take over the world.
Right. Okay.
And Scrooge needs to stop enabling it.
Yeah, that would be a good thing. So, of course,
yeah, I mean,
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was like, you understand where Scrooge is coming from this episode, though. He's just like trying to make a profit at the expense of everyone else.
It is very much kind of like an interesting thing with Scrooge McDuck and capitalism, right? Where, yeah, it is kind of shitty, some of the stuff he does, especially like laying off his whole staff. But you understand where he's coming from, you know? It's like, yeah, I guess with technology like this, you really wouldn't need to hire anyone. This robot can do anything. So, I like how they kind of play it like morally ambiguous.
I mean, I know that's like the way the comics portray him. Like sometimes Scrooge was the hero and villain of his perspective.
Sure.
Of his respective stories.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good point.
I mean, like he's not out being outright malicious or anything. He's just like, yeah, he's just being a businessman here.
Right.
Like, okay, he's pretty much an allegory for capitalism in general.
Yeah, sure. And of course, Armstrong is defeated with water.
Yeah, the same water that
What a world! I'm melting.
I'm short-circuiting. It's kind of like a callback to the beginning too, with the whole water dousing the fire.
It is, yeah, right.
So it's kind of like a good Chekhov's gun kind of moment.
Mm. And then they celebrate at the end with 2 marshmallows in their hot chocolate instead of the 1 marshmallow that Armstrong suggested to save on revenue. Yeah, that'll show him.
Yes, and everyone got their marshmallows except for Scrooge.
Aww.
It's like, efficiency has its place, but not in my hot chocolate.
Okay, Jacob, so any final thoughts on Armstrong then?
No, I mean, like I said, definitely out of the beginning 5 episodes, this definitely is one of the strongest episodes we've seen so far.
Yeah, I think it's unfair to like kind of compare it to anything from Treasure of the Golden Suns, because obviously
except episode 4. Yeah.
What?
Except episode 4.
Well, yeah, except episode 4. Sure, fair.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, it is a very, very good episode, and like I said, just for a Saturday morning cartoon in an era where Saturday morning cartoons weren't known for their sophisticated writing, I think this episode does a very good job of dealing with a sci-fi story, and a really unique sci-fi story that actually has some eerie premonitions about the way that technology is going to develop in the next 30 years since this episode aired. You know what I mean? It's kind of creepy that way. But
it's hard to believe it's kind of hard to believe that come September this show will be 30 years old.
Yep. Yeah, that's crazy. That's actually, come to think of it, wouldn't that be a good time to release the new show? Like, because if the old show premiered in September, couldn't they technically premiere the new show on the 30th anniversary?
That'd be interesting.
I'm just throwing that out there. We'll see.
But yeah, it's clear that this show like actually set a standard for like what future cartoons could become. Like there's the like better quality to animation, the writing. I mean, like a lot of the show actually set up a lot of standards for that for cartoons nowadays.
Absolutely.
I mean, that's the reason why this show is so well remembered, other than the catchy theme song, is because of like how well it's established a lot of like the quality of animation, the quality of writing that's seen in today's cartoons even.
Sure. Okay, so next episode is Robot Robbers, Jacob. It returns the combo of Alan Zaslov and Michael Keyes, and it's also based on a story by Carl Barks. Carl Barks, of course, is the creator of Scrooge McDuck, so anytime it says story by Carl Barks, it usually means that it's kind of taking homage or kind of taking some key story elements from a Scrooge McDuck comic book, which is interesting. So, and this, I believe, is the first time in the series that we're getting an episode that's directly related to the Scrooge McDuck comics. I believe this is the first story by Carl Barks credit that we've gotten so far.
I believe so too. So, plus it introduces Ma Beagle, who's also voiced by who's also voiced by June Foray.
Yep. We get back to back June Foray because we have Ma Beagle in episode 10 and then Magica returns in episode 11. So okay, Jacob. All right, so yeah, that's about it, folks. Thank you guys so much for watching this. I'm so glad that it's gotten a decent viewership because we really like talking about this show. And again, like this podcast is basically an exercise in cartoon archaeology in its own right. You know, we're going back to something that is basically 30 years old. You know, it's just shy of being 30 years old. And we're taking a look at what works, what doesn't, what can be improved, you know, and ultimately kind of celebrating and admiring DuckTales. So Jacob, go ahead and take us out.
All right. Well, tonight's adventure has come to an end. But be sure to join us next time on Discovering DuckTales.
A-Whoo-Hoo. I've got no strings on me.